Welcome to Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
I'm your co-host, Mark.
I'm your missing co-host from last week, Billy.
And I'm your other co-host, Josh. And I'm going to be a star, damn it. We are joined by a Canadian rocker on this one and really a multi-faceted Jane of all trades, Miss Olivia, Harley-Olivia.
You're not the first one to mess it up. Hi.
He's bad with names.
I could be the last one. At least in my opinion, I can get character names right where you're like, yeah, that guy, that one guy, you know what I'm talking about?
Thing.
He did that
thing.
With the face.
With the face, yeah. Well, welcome, Harley, to Abyss Gazing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to have you. You are a musician, a vocal coach.
I do a lot.
Do a lot of things. Yeah. So, can you kind of take us into a little bit of what it is you do and kind of the sounds and genres that you end up doing as a musician, first and foremost?
Yeah, so right now, I've been putting music out as a solo act, so under my name Harley-Olivia for, I guess, since COVID, and really kind of hit the ground running with that. It's kind of like an alt-rock situation. I used to play in metal bands, so I mean, you can take the girl out of metal, but you can't take metal out of the girl. So I still kind of bring that edge to it. The only difference is that I feel like in my elder years, I've wanted to dance more and like have more fun and not just always be like the screamer person. So now I get to like rock and roll and dance and have fun and kind of promote sort of like a positive message with my music while also like screaming my guts out when I feel like it. So it's kind of fun.
I'm curious if like the transition between kind of like a more collaborative effort to something solo and also kind of going from a little bit more, I don't know, like people say metal and like Mark and I are both listen to metal. So like
Yay.
metal is such a broad
genre.
Yeah, so it could be like, oh yeah, like this is death metal, but or this is metalcore, or this is hardcore. You know, like what kind of music like is your background in I guess the metal community?
I guess it was still always had a melodic aspect to it because I am still a singer first and foremost. So I always I guess it was kind of like a rock metal. My old band was called Anthems and Ashes, which there's still stuff on Spotify and I've never announced this, but there's actually a full other EP that's unreleased from that band that will end up on Spotify at some point. But yeah, so and just to answer your question about the collaborative thing, like it's really hard going from being like trying to make music with 4 people who are really passionate. You have to kind of find like the right mix of personalities to get shit done, basically.
Yeah.
So I mean, I still have a collaborative process because my producer, we co-write together, and he plays the guitars. We bring in friends to record drums, so it's still other cooks in the kitchen, but it always starts from my melodies, which is cool. So it's a more streamlined process, I feel like.
So a friend of mine out of New York, we had her on the show, Victims and Villains Proper. We had her on back in like April or May, and she's also a solo artist out of New York. Kind of has like a very similar story, and she had talked about like the process kind of being like for her it's definitely like a hook in the words that kind of come first. For you is like as a solo artist, like what is kind of the spark that kind of launches what will become a song, or even like themes within a larger album?
It's so interesting. I feel like it's hard to explain. Like it kind of just comes to me. Like sometimes it will be some words. Like usually I'd say it comes from a feeling. So maybe I'm feeling down one day, and my train of thought in my brain, maybe there's like some reoccurring thoughts in my brain loop, and maybe I'll sort of meditate on one and then eventually kind of add like a little melody to it, and then it just sort of snowballs and snowballs and grows. And then when I add more focused attention to it, I can actually build it into a verse and a chorus. And then it's usually at that point that I bring it to my producer, and then we kind of flesh it out and turn it into an actual song. He'll add the guitars, we'll write the bridge. But I've even had it where, like, as a personal challenge, I was in San Francisco one time, and I took an Uber to the bridge because I had to film some content there. But I didn't have Wi-Fi to get an Uber back to my hotel. So I had like an almost 2-hour walk to get back to my place.
Jeez.
So I was like, why don't I write a song? I got 2 hours. So I like just kind of picked a line or a saying in my head and then snowballed it. And then by the time I got back to my hotel, I had a verse, a chorus, and a bridge, and the song was done. And that's actually going to be on my next EP. So it was kind of like a fun little challenge.
I know with metal, there's always the one artist in person that gets you into it. It was like, for me, it was my brother. And he took me to a Tesla concert at a little bitty venue back in the mid-90s. Yeah. And we sat up and snuck to watch Metallica on the MTV Music Awards. So what was it for you that got you into the genre?
Well, similar story. My sister's older than me, and she always downloaded the cool stuff on Napster. So she showed me oh my God. I can't believe I'm blanking right now. You know what? I had this thought in my head. I'm like, you're not going to remember, and it's going to be embarrassing. And then I was like, oh, you win. Silverchair. There we go. So nice. Silverchair, I really love Daniel John's vocals, and I feel like I taught myself to sing based on just wailing those in the house. But then I very quickly pivoted, and like Marilyn Manson became my like idol. I was obsessed with him. I wanted to be him. Like everything about Manson kind of shaped where it went from there. The shock rock, everything. Even I didn't realize this. I did this by accident, but his name, Marilyn Manson, it's like the Marilyn Monroe, soft, Charles Manson, serial killer. My name, Harley, is like kind of hard, and then Olivia is kind of pretty, and I liked it for that reason. But then going back to my original like influences, I was like, oh my God, I did that without even thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, I guess like do you as an artist, are you ever like with instruments? Because I know that by trade you're also a vocal coach as well. So do you ever like find yourself kind of creating melodies on like a piano or a guitar, and then kind of having that in the process when it comes to like song creation?
Not really. I can play a bit of piano for my lessons, and I took lessons as a kid and as an adult, but my main thing is singing. So I kind of do it a la Michael Jackson. He did a lot of like melodies with his voice. Like that's definitely the instrument I feel the most like I have the most creative control with. So I'll sing little melody lines. But yeah, I don't know. Instruments never gave me the same dopamine boost that singing did. So it was really hard for me to stick with them. Yeah.
With being a vocal coach, how did you find yourself kind of down that career path? That's not something that it's not an everyday job. I feel like I hear people find, and what kind of started that path for you?
Well, it's funny. So I have this. It's funny that you called me a Jane of all trades in the beginning of this, because I feel that way. What I in later years realized was undiagnosed ADHD is my inability to make decisions. So I always just wanted to be everything. I wanted to be a singer, actor. I want to write a book. I still have these ideas in my head. I'm like, oh, one day I'll write a novel. Like one day I'll paint a classic oil painting. Like it's just I'm a little delusional, I think. Although I am a painter, so it could happen. But I just kind of wanted to be everything. And so I went to school for theater, where I learned a lot about the voice. And then I've been in singing lessons since I was 13. So that's been decades, or I guess 2 decades. wait, that's math. Math is hard. 2 decades. And then I went to school for film school because I was like, maybe I'll be a director. Like, this is how delusional I am. And then when COVID hit, I dropped out of film school, and I kind of just realized that in trying all of these different avenues and through not being able to make a decision, the one thing that has always been my passion and has always been the thing that I focus the most attention on is singing. And because I've been in singing lessons for so long, like, it's just such a natural progression. Yeah, it made sense. And I like helping people with their voices. And the thing that's really cool is the more that I learn about the voice and teach about the voice, the better my voice is getting. So it's actually makes all the sense in the world for me.
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, you guys are going to get ready to hear Harley's voice and some of her talent that we've been teasing for the last few minutes. This is a song called Haunted. We will be right back to talk about the biggest star of the 30s.
Woo!
Here in this room, don't really know what to say. Been around people all day, kind of feel out of place. Wishing that I could go back home to my son, far away from this place, just a party of one. Watching the walls, my eyes play tricks on my brain. The people all slink around, in and out of their frames. I think of you and what you had to give up. I wish I had all your strength, instead I fill up my cup. And then the darkness comes creeping in. I can't pretend I'm not feeling it. I can't pretend it's not my fault again. Closing my eyes, I'm haunted by the thoughts in my own head. Nothing I do can stop the unravel in my head all day. Digging my nails in the skin to release it. Please just let me be. I'm so tired of always pretending, afraid that you will see. Memories of how I was before this began. I was so young and naive, this wasn't part of my plan. Everyone told me I'd become a big star, but I'm so far from the sky, nobody knows who you are. Hell of the quiet is deafening. I can't deny this is happening. I can't deny I've lost control again. Closing my eyes, I'm haunted by the thoughts in my own head. Nothing I do can stop the unravel in my head all day. Digging my nails in the skin to release it. Please just let me be. I'm so tired of always pretending, afraid that you will see. Bad memories, they still hurt my brain. Replaying them over again. Helpless, I am locked away, and I wish that you stay. Don't leave this way. Closing my eyes, I'm haunted by the ghosts in my own head. Nothing I do can stop the unravel in my head all day. Digging my nails in the skin to release it. Please just let me be. I'm so tired of always pretending, afraid that you will see. Closing my eyes, I'm haunted by the ghosts in my own head. Nothing I do can stop the unravel in my head all day. Digging my nails in the skin to release it. Please just let me be. I'm so tired of always pretending, afraid that you will see.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text help to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Hey, welcome back to Abyss Gazing, and we are jumping into Pearl, kind of continuing on our Triple X trilogy series that we're doing. That's what I'm dubbing it. I don't know what to call this trilogy, so we're just going to call it the Triple X trilogy.
I like that.
It works. It works.
But you go ahead, Billy.
I was going to say it works more ways than one.
Yeah, I rewatching it this time. There are several things that I forgot about, and that projectionist scene was in there, and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of racy." And then you kind of get to like the second time that they show it, it's like, "Oh no, this is actually a threesome. This is really racy for this time period." But Harley, this is the first time that you have seen this movie. So what did you think about it?
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I really liked it. I thought it was super, it was like a slow build to the creepiness, which I kind of like, because then you don't really know what angle it's going to come from. I did really like it. At first I realized I related a lot to Pearl, and then she stabbed the goose and I was like, never mind, that's where it ends.
just a little bit. Yeah, we talked about this last week, but for me, I think I didn't initially love this movie the first time that I saw it, and one of my friends was like, "You got to give it another chance, but look at it as like a less whimsical, more psychologically twisted Wizard of Oz." Wizard of Oz is like one of my favorite films of all time, and I went back, rewatched it, and I was like, God, this thing is perfect. It's been one of my favorite films that's been released in the last few years. And so I'm very excited to talk about this movie. But
it's kind of funny you mentioned Wizard of Oz. I keep seeing the clip where they've mashed up and Tara's walk, where they're leaving with all the dwarves and everything starting down the. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Sorry, sidetracked. ADHD moment. Hey.
All are welcome here.
Yay!
But Billy, welcome back to Abyss Gazing. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
I can't remember if this was a first time watch for you or not. So
Yeah, it was actually, and I actually like this one better than I liked X, because I didn't get to go over X with y'all. So I actually like this one, but without somebody telling me, I did see the psychological, and I love the fact that they use like the Technicolor to make it look more Wizard of Oz-y, to mess with your head, and using the bright colors instead of the dark and gloomy to kind of hide that from you, so you can maybe see it from Pearl's eyes until she goes crazy. So
That's one of the things that like really struck me on this viewing is when the barn doors open up at the very end, very beginning, and it's kind of this very luscious green scenery. I was just like, oh, forgot how like bright this one is. And this is the second A24 film that I would say you have a lot of like really unsettling imagery set up against these like really bright colors and bright color palette, with Midsommar being the other one. I think that's probably one of the other reasons that makes that film so impactful, is the use of bright colors with the really devastation that's kind of like the undertone, and I think it works here just the same as well.
Yeah, and I love the fact, like Harley already pointed to it, was, "Hey, Mr. Goose, how are you?" Stab. within 5 minutes, you're like, okay, yep, it's not Wizard of Oz. So,
I was trying to figure out if she was either schizophrenic or like psychopath or what she was.
no, she was a star, remember?
She's a star.
Oh yeah, but obviously not.
Oh, and speaking of stars, the shooting star was a nice kick, because if you didn't realize it was a horror movie by that point, and you saw a shooting star and started thinking positive, okay, yeah, she's gonna be a star. And there goes a star she wished upon. It's not the wish she got. So
Yeah, I would love to hear from somebody who's like I don't know, some sort of like a psychiatrist or something, what their actual diagnosis for her would be. But it reminded me of the psychopath test from like the early 2000s. Do you guys know that one?
No, please enlighten me, because that sounds very fascinating.
Sorry. I think it was in like a Cosmo magazine, so take it with a grain of salt. But it was like, it's a situation where, just say you go to your uncle's funeral and you're eating the finger sandwiches at the reception, and all of a sudden this like girl comes up to you, and you like really get along, and she's really funny, but then she leaves before you get to get her number, and you're like, damn. And then the next day you kill your cousin. And so like the question is why? Like why would you kill your cousin? Why is that a logical explanation?
Yeah, and there's like one answer. I forgot what the answer is.
So the answer, so for us, like like if you're not a psychopath, you'd be like, oh, that sounds random and scary. But to a psychopath, apparently the answer is that, well, she showed up to your uncle's funeral, so chances are she probably knows your cousin, so she'll probably show up to your cousin's funeral. So it's logical, and that's what I kept thinking when I was watching Pearl. I was like, everything she's doing is really logical. It just has no moral compass. Like, she's able to compartmentalize everything that she's doing and has no fear of it being a bad act or hurting somebody, but they are very logical steps.
But there's a couple scenes too that indicate she might be hallucinating at certain points.
Mark,
What?
is your connection okay? Because your vocals sound like you just like made out with a helium balloon.
no, Mark.
Oh,
Mark.
Me.
It sounds normal to me.
His voice is normally deeper. That's the reason why we're asking.
What do you mean?
You sound like a chipmunk.
You do.
You sound like Alvin over there.
Okay, hold on.
Did you take some meds or something?
No.
Which is weird because.
But that shouldn't mess with your voice like that.
Well, this morning he sounded fine when he logged on this morning. So I'm just trying to make sure that he's okay.
Yeah.
Or that it's a connection issue.
Let me move my dongle for my headset. It's been acting up for work too. So.
Okay.
Sorry about technical difficulties.
It happens.
I mean, if nothing else, we just roll like normal, and then people are like, why does he sound like the Alvin?
Does that sound any better?
Yes.
That sounds. There you go. Mark is back. All right.
You can hear the difference now, Harley.
That's how he's.
That's what we were saying.
I don't know. You've seen well, you know, in Lord of the Rings when they're at the circle, like the meeting or whatever. Have you ever caught Aragorn's voice in that? He sounds like a chipmunk. He is like super nasally. Watch it next time. He sounds crazy.
I wonder, like, my wife's a super fan, so like her first tattoo she got was Smog, and so
Amazing.
I need to see if she knows that.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that movie several times. I've never noticed it, so I'm kind of curious if she knows it. But every time we watch, I think it's the two towers where the camera's like panning over like the minefield of like all the dead dwarfs. There's like one of the extras that like starts to get up, and then they like edit it out. So
That's
every
funny.
time we watch it, she's like, there it goes.
Yeah, I'm that person too. I'm like, Eric, did you know Viggo Mortensen broke his toes here? Like, I'm the most annoying person.
All
Have
right,
you
I'm
ever
gonna go.
seen Viggo Mortensen as the devil?
No.
What movie is that?
The Prophecy with Christopher Walken
Write that down.
and
Yeah,
Virginia
we did talk
Madsen.
about that. Yeah. All right, you ready? Mark, it's gonna be you. So wherever you were responding to Harley, pick up.
I don't remember.
It's the psychopath test. Okay.
Oh.
All right. No, with Pearl not having a moral compass. Do you remember now?
Vaguely.
Do I need to
That's
jump
gross.
in and redirect the conversation?
Possibly. We'll see.
All right. Pick this up.
So there was a couple scenes that looked like she was hallucinating too. Like when she was hearing her mom sing to her, but she's very clearly dead. Things like
Right.
that. There was a couple scenes like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's quite as extreme as Todd Phillips' Joker movie that we got a couple years ago, where you're not quite sure if the entirety of the film was an entire like dream sequence or not. I think for Pearl, we talked about this last week, and during X is this case of being heavily isolated, and not just heavily isolated, but also having your, an unsupportive mother, having your husband off at war, and a father that is like barely holding on for dear life, and you have like all these expectations, but none of the things that you want are of importance or of note. And I think that's kind of the reason why we start to kind of see her go slowly away. And I think what Ty West does here that's really impactful is when you look at the scene where Pearl's mother-in-law gives mom the swine, that camera, every time it goes back and pivots back to the swine, it's always a symbol for the deterioration of Pearl's mental health. And so by the time that you kind of get that last shot with Pearl or Howard coming back from the war and Pearl kind of walking in, he's kind of seeing like all of the maggots and everything, and you as the audience are just left with this really unsettling, really just uncomfortable image of Pearl with the smiling and the tears. It's this visual depiction of someone that is trying to hold it together, but it can't.
Yeah, I picked up on that too. I also picked up on the bird in the cage metaphor too. When her dad's in the living room and she's gonna kill him, and it cuts to the bird in the cage and it's like trapped. I felt like he was trapped in his chair and was trying, like, he's very much alive. You can tell by his eyes he's in there. But yeah, there's a lot of imagery in this one for sure.
And then
Did they ever say what happened to the dad, or just that he implied that he got sick?
So it's implied that he caught like whatever is the source of the pandemic, whatever. Every time you go into town, like, you have to have the mask. And so it's implied that he had gotten that, but
I think it was the Spanish flu, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's very much a throwaway line. I kind of took it as like this viewing. I was like, well, what if like Pearl is actually just inheriting a lot of this stuff from her mom? Like, what if her mom had kind of poisoned her dad because she had the same dreams as Pearl and had kind of wanted the same life as Pearl, but instead got the life that Pearl ends up living throughout the aftermath of this movie and the duration of X.
Yeah, I mean, and they kind of leaned into like the German aspect too, a little bit of how they do a lot of movies where the German characters always treated like harsher and everything, just partly because of the language, because of the way it sounds when they speak German, like Nein and Nick, and I learned all that from being over there, that it's not as harsh as it actually is. Some of it is normal words we would say every day. It's just the dialect of it, and just some of the mindset and everything would have been different in that time frame. One of the throwaway lines probably that I caught was when her mom mentioned that Howard was off killing the Germans.
Mhm.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that was a split in the house too.
Oh, that was, I think they said, what was it, 1918, 1914, something like that at the beginning of the
Yeah.
movie.
That
Yeah.
1918.
So yeah, that would have been the Spanish influenza epidemic and World War One.
Right. So that would have been another factor in there to break up the house between her mom and her, and part of the fighting, even though it's not officially like said completely, but that line was in there that she threw that of why am I going to read the paper about us killing more Germans?
That's a really interesting angle to look at, Billy, because, for her mom, it might also be the reason why there is tension between the two of them is she can't direct that anger directly at Howard, and so Pearl might actually be like a fill-in for that as well.
Exactly. So
But
go ahead.
I was gonna say at the same time, like I thought, like right off the bat, the mom seemed like a crazy villain. But then I was like, well, maybe we're supposed to view her that way, but maybe she's not really that bad. And then there was the line where she said something to Pearl about people are gonna see what you do and how you act. You won't be able to hide it for very long or something.
Mm.
And then I realized, like, and you kind of mentioned this before, we're seeing it all from Pearl's perspective, like with the Technicolor and the just the way that she is going about things. So we're only seeing her version of events. And then so maybe when the mom says that, it piqued my interest, because then I thought, okay, well, maybe there's more to the story and we're just haven't seen it yet. So maybe she is kind of exhibiting some psychopathic tendencies and we're just about to see them ourselves.
I kind of felt more like the mother was somewhat broken and felt like she was doing what she needed to do to keep everything together and keep everyone safe.
Yeah, I also kind of second what Mark was just saying, because the scene where kind of everything hits that boiling moment between Pearl and her mom, and she ends up getting like shortly lit on fire thereafter.
Literally boiling, because the
Yeah.
boiling corn gets poured on her.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she had said something like, mom said something to the extent of, I had big dreams, and I didn't want necessarily this life. I wanted to be a wife, not a mother. And, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, a generational thing is like, do we have to follow the same exact footsteps our parents did?
It was, I want to be a wife, not a caregiver. And the only reason why that
Yeah.
line got me is because I've been there.
Mm.
Not the wife part, but the caregiver part. So that line hit. I could see both sides of that, because it's like, you're not doing anything to hurt the person you love. You want to be there and take care of them. But at the same time, you're like, what did I do to deserve this?
Go ahead.
Which can play on the mental health of both people in that situation.
And even from like the perspective of the mother, like, Pearl's maybe 17, 18,
Yeah.
like maybe 20 at most. So like you got to figure like
in that time period, she may have been 15 or 16.
That's fair. So I mean, either way you spin it, like it's still an illustration of my point being that like she hadn't been married, terribly long,
Right.
Typically when you are having to be a caregiver in that moment, or it's typically a lot longer into the marriage, where it's maybe you've been there for like 40, 50 years, or but up to that point maybe it's a couple of days here, a couple of days there, when one person gets sick or another. So to kind of have this situation where we also don't know how long the dad was sick. So I mean, he could have been sick for several years up to
Right.
that point, and it's really painful to watch. Like, kind of like the dad. I feel like I kind of felt for him the most in this situation, because he's like terrified. Like, he almost gets fed to an alligator.
He gets choked at one point.
Yeah. He has to watch his daughter bathe, which was uncomfortable.
That was the weird part for me. That's when I was like, oh, this is how it's going. When she has a bath in front of her comatose father, I was like, okay.
Like, yeah. Every time I watch this movie, I'm always like, this is the most uncomfortable like scene. Like, the theater porno like doesn't really like compare in comparison to that.
That's
It's
a
like
cakewalk.
In front of the
Scarecrow. Scarecrow, maybe, but not the theater.
I think the Scarecrow wins in this movie. He's the one who wins.
Yeah.
Scarecrow.
I don't know. The alligator got well fed by the end.
That's true.
But I'm married.
Oh my god.
Yeah. But
that was
ahead,
just a weird scene to begin with.
the Scarecrow or the
Scarecrow,
Yeah.
because it starts off like she's just kind of imagining and having fun, but then it gets kind of weird when she starts seeing the other dude's face, and it's like, I guess somebody had to get some wood. I just fear for splinters in that case.
I think you were watching the wrong Wizard of Oz here.
Mark, I will push back against you, because we talked about this last week, where in X, Pearl's entire thing is that she wants that connection and she wants that stimulation. And for some people, physical touch is something about just being near a person and cuddling or having your arm around them or hand holding. For other people, it's something a lot more intimate, like sex. And so here you have a woman that is, if she could be as young as 15, as young as as old as 19. So you have this really I don't want to say sexual peak, but you have a woman that is sexually deprived because she essentially wants to be with her husband, and at this point she just kind of wants any type of physical attention that is not demanding, like we see with her mom, or isn't physically also physically demanding while also taking care of her dad.
Well, at the same time, you find out later in the movie that she's doing all this for Howard simply for the reason to get out of the farm.
And
to
that's why
get away
she
from the
married
farm.
him
That's
too.
why
Yeah.
she married him.
Yeah, she married him to just get off the farm.
Some people marry for love, and some people, I mean, you can marry someone to get out of someone, and they can still be a good lay. Like, just putting it out there.
Well,
But I mean, don't lie to him in the process.
I just want
I'll
to
take-
take me away from here. Give me a
I'll
life
take the
of
Scarecrow
luxury.
scene over the old scene.
Oh God, we don't have to talk
I'll
about
take-
that. We talked about that last week. We don't talk,
I know,
have to
that's
bring
why I
that up
brought it
again.
Just that's with you, I did.
I want to know what she told Howard when he got home, but he stayed. That's my biggest question.
Yeah, because
Maybe
like,
he was just scared and didn't want to leave. It was like, maybe I might become fodder if I try to go at this point.
but
I want
also,
to know how they
Go ahead.
missed the song at the end as "You're a Crazy Bitch" whenever it was just her face on there. That's the song I heard when I saw that. Why did they just play that? That was like the perfect song. It would have fit. Not for the
But-
year, but for her.
you're talking Buck Cherry, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I don't know if
But-
it would have fit the aesthetic.
in,
Well, I mean,
in
not
re-
the aesthetic, but
in reality, at that time period, it was super rare to see a divorce at
Yeah.
all.
Mm.
If anything, she might have been sent away to an institution at the very least, or at the very worst.
Yeah.
I was
Well-
actually thinking too, he just came back from war where he's been seeing dead bodies constantly. So he walks in and it's more dead bodies. He's probably like, all right, yeah, that checks out. Whereas like usually people come from war and then they're have PTSD because now they're thrown into like normalcy of life and they have to like pretend they didn't see all those horrors. So he's like, yeah, I saw horrors and now there are horrors here. So it's just sort of like a continuation of horror for him. I don't know.
I would have seen it more as shocking because he's coming home to where he thinks is a safe place to find his wife that's been left alone for who knows how long.
Yeah.
Just hanging out in the house with her dead parents.
Well, initially, yes, I'm sure they're shocked. You see it on his face, but I think maybe he's adapting to it because he's also come from horrors of war.
Or he really just cared about her.
That, or the other thing that got me is his sister and everybody's made a point that he came from a good home and he could go back and everything, but he wants to get away and he could have got away from the war. Well, did he do all that for a reason? Is that part of his reason of why he didn't turn her in? He doesn't want to go back and deal with them or anything else?
Well, they had a scene in Boardwalk Empire where they were talking to one of the main characters that he threw away everything and how he'd be a bigger guy in the basically mob and everything, but he decided to go to war, to World War I instead. His reasoning was he wanted to serve his country. So it could have been just as simple as that.
So I am actually going to agree with what Harley said. I think that, especially around this time, and even to now in modern times, we're recording this in June, but it's getting released in July. June is Men's Mental Health Month. It's a month where, aside from Pride Month, we as men, we talk more openly. We bring awareness to how fragile the mental health of men is. And, just from a more modern perspective, suicide is 4 times higher among men than it is women. And just to kind of put that in perspective, it's about all suicides in the United States, men make up a quarter of them.
Wow.
I don't have any statistics for Canada, sorry. But here in the United States, the second leading cause of suicide is for men over the age of 45. And so I think we're at this place now where we're starting to understand and grasp the importance of men's mental health and kind of looking back on a lot of practices that we've done over the years and saying that this isn't actually helpful. And so I think in the time period that this movie takes place, I think that it is somewhat of shock, but also at the same time, when you have this shocking revelation, men were trained to kind of just bottle it down and you just kind of roll with the punches. And so what we saw with X is that Howard deeply loves Pearl, to the point where he helps her continue to kill into her 80s and also continues to give her everything that she wants. And I think maybe this traumatic event at the end of the film is kind of the start of everything with that. But I think at the same time, I think a lot of it plays into some of the things that Harley talked about, where it is just where men's mental health was at the time period that this movie takes place.
Yeah, 1918. It's 18, right? 1918, I think. Yeah,
Like
there's still like public hangings and war and like it's still pretty rough out there.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains. or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Well, part of the problem there is now is that you have one group that's trying to bring awareness to mental health and another group that's using every bit of it as ammo to attack men. And you see it all over the place. You see some groups that are trying to be supportive and helpful, and you should do this, talk to these people. And then you've got another group, every chance they get, it's just holding it over their head as ammunition to put them down.
See, I'm really glad you kind of brought this up, because this brings up another topic that this movie brought out. Like, I noticed on this viewing is the scene where, in the very end of the movie, right before Mitzi dies, and Pearl's kind of just confessing everything about cheating and everything, and Mitzi just kind of like reacts like most of us probably would in that moment, of just being like backing off very slowly, very reassuringly. We also see it with the projectionist as well earlier in the film, but it is this understanding of knowing who your audience is and knowing what they can take from a psychologically standpoint, because if you're confessing to them a lot of this trauma and a lot of these things that you've done, or that these desires, not everyone can handle that. So understand the importance of a safe environment also too, and just be careful with what you say and who you say it to, because like you said, Mark, a lot of them can take those vulnerabilities and replace them as ammunition. So it twists this completely different narrative than what you originally had said to them in confidence.
It's also interesting too what you're speaking about, kind of as a vocal coach perspective. One of my favorite things about coaching is I have a lot of male students, probably age 30 to 50, and a lot of times people underestimate the vulnerability it takes to sing. And so a lot of those tend to be men. And so when they go to sing, they feel this intense vulnerability because you have to be really open. We end up talking about emotions a lot. We have to relieve tensions that are in our neck and throat, which you may have been holding for years. If you think about holding back your emotions, the place you feel it is you hold it in your throat. Anytime you try not to cry, where are you tensing? Your vocal cords, your larynx. So I love coaching men and allowing them the safe space to let go of some of those tensions and find their voice. And it's something that I wish everybody could go through, not just people who want to be singers, because you really do have to kind of learn to be vulnerable and learn to kind of shake off that mentality of hold everything in.
Yeah, 'cause my dad underwent vocal coaching when I was probably like 13 or 14, and
Nice.
he kind of said that his like vocal coach, also a woman, had kind of pointed a lot of that stuff out, and so there had been kind of this like holding back period, and then it eventually kind of grew into where there was like a confidence, and like you're working through, because trauma is one of those very interesting things. Like, it affects the body in so many unique ways, and you don't really understand the length or the impact that trauma has until you go to do something like, singing, or to pull a completely random pop culture reference, Ricky Bobby getting behind the wheel in Talladega Nights. Like, what are those things? Are those the other cars? Like, we laugh about it, but it's this guy experienced this very traumatic thing, and this is kind of the result of that trauma and not dealing with it properly.
Yeah, and like it's so funny how our bodies are, like you were saying, like the body keeps the score, right? So it definitely holds on to those emotions without us kind of being aware of it in our conscious mind. But I remember being in theater school, and we did like a lot of body release work because we want our bodies to be able to act on stage night after night and not accrue the wrong types of tension. So you kind of want to start from a clean slate. And when we did that release work, I remember other students in my class, someone released their left shoulder and they started crying because that's where they held, I guess something had happened to them. They have always tensed their shoulders since that day. And when you finally release it, all the emotions come with it that put the tension there in the first place. So I've always been so fascinated by our bodies and our brains and how they work together, and how it tries to keep you safe from these traumatic memories, but in the end sometimes it can hurt you. But yeah, it's just so interesting.
I'm also kind of curious, kind of digging back into the film, like how we find Pearl kind of going through a lot of this stuff, because what we've found over time as scientists have kind of studied the behavior and the brains of other serial killers is that sometimes the tendencies for violence starts with, you know, small animals. And so we see it with the goose, and we also kind of see it with the alligator as well. But this this perpetual cycle of violence, like, where does that come from for Pearl? Is this a thing of being, you know, raised in by an unsupportive mother, or having her father kind of essentially taken too early? There's so many different things I feel like that you could kind of look to that could kind of contribute to the behavior that we see as the audience throughout the duration of the film.
A lot of mental health issues stem from wanting a sense of control over something. And it seems like she doesn't have any sort of control over her life. Even when she's married, Howard calls the shots. And when she's with her mom calls the shots. She's not allowed to follow any of her passions. So maybe the killing of the animals, and it's like a sense of control. It's like she's playing God a little bit, when in her everyday life, she never gets that feeling.
Yeah, and I
she
think isolation plays into it too, where she's cut off from the world. Like you said, everybody else is controlling her, and
Yeah.
she's got all these dreams and everything, and she has control over the animals, and that's the only thing she has around her is the animals and her parents. So she takes it out more on the animals because she can't take it out. Well, she eventually does take it out on her parents, but you know what I mean. She has to work up to that, and that's where the big thing is.
No, she talked about not feeling things the same way as other people, and that she took it out on animals that couldn't hurt her at first. They couldn't fight back or hurt her. So that goes back to me wondering if she might be a psychopath or sociopath or whatever it's called now. If it falls back into that. Because you're in a time period when a lot of that wasn't diagnosed or not diagnosed properly at all. So she might have just been diagnosed at the time period with being hysterical and sent to an asylum.
I was going to say, I wonder how she would be like now, like a COVID or a post-COVID, where we've been through the isolation and all that stuff. Everybody's been separated. We've got social media and everything, but, you know, everybody was still separated. How would she have been different? Because she could have talked to people, but it still would have been in isolation.
They're even separated even more too, and like they really double down on it, because like this film also takes place during a pandemic.
Right.
So not only are you isolated from the rest of the world on this farm, which is quite lengthy away from civilization, but also at the same time that, like, once you're in civilization, there is this expectancy of being further away from people so that you don't contract something and possibly not only make yourself sick, but also at the same time further your father's cause of being ill.
And one of the other lines, was it a projectionist, whenever he was driving her home and they saw the gentleman walking home from war or whatever, and she turns around and he's like, "Do you know him?" She's like, I'm not sure. He's like, "Well, nowadays you can't tell. I mean, people wear masks." Well, that could fit today just as well as it fit then. So
yeah, we know what that feels like.
yeah.
It felt like absolute hell is what that felt like.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I guess like one of the other things too is like kind of with Pearl's situation, another angle too is when we first meet the projectionist, he kind of is trying to befriend and trying to be cordial to Pearl, and she says she kind of explains the situation and everything, and he's like, okay, well, this is a girl that has a lot of uh responsibilities, a lot of commitments, a lot of expectations that are already placed on her. And I think that sometimes, and I'm curious also, Harley, how you feel about this, being that you are self-employed, is those expectations, do you ever find that they prevent you from having those moments to breathe? Because he does say something to the extent of, don't forget to live your life. And I feel like that there are those times where like the entirety of the world feels like it runs 1,000 miles a minute, especially with social media. Do you ever find that it's really hard to kind of take those opportunities of rest, or to really lean into the moments that make up life to live it to its fullest?
Yeah, every day. I'm a pretty, what's the word? I'm trying to do everything. So I'm trying to tour with my band, write music, create, direct, edit music videos. I'm trying to keep up with all my students, teach a certain amount of students a week, trying to eat healthy and exercise at some point. So there's a lot that there's just so many responsibilities, and there's so many things that we put on ourselves, like, because you kind of want to make it. And this is also why I kind of relate to Pearl, because I want to, she says something about feeling special, like, oh no, I'm different, I'm special. And I think we all kind of feel that sometimes, or at least you want it to be true. You want to feel like you're really special and really different. So you work really hard to create this legacy about yourself. And you can kind of get into what's it called, like a little spiral of not allowing yourself to have days off, or getting mad at, like, I get mad at myself if I'm like, oh, I watched a show in bed today, but I also did all this other work. And it comes from the territory of being ADHD as well. Like I'm not always the kindest to myself, because I feel like I need to be productive all the time. But you're right. It's totally important to let yourself have days off and enjoy that time. It's hard.
Yeah, I came across this on one of my friends shared this on Facebook, where it says working 7 days straight is not a flex. Take rest.
No.
And that's part of the reason that I think that we're, as the audience, watching this character slowly deteriorate to where we see that she's cracking, because she's trying to bring herself to the edge of life and chase after the things that she wants. And so, like you had said, like earlier, like she really wants that control. And I know that there are times where like I do Mark and I kind of share the responsibilities of booking guests on the show, but like outside of that, like I'm also like planning up I oversee our film festival and watch a lot of the submissions with Billy, but also at the same time, like I am taking care of bands when we're doing events, booking conventions, planning panels, producing the podcast, running the social media, on top of being married and enjoying life with my wife, and also working a job that keeps me incredibly busy. So it's like there's moments where I'm just like, I'll come home from the day job and I'm like, all right, I just need 10 minutes to like, or 20 minutes to just like, all right, I'm just gonna put on an episode of, lately it's been Key and Peele, just something that like I can like just tune out and just laugh or be away from social media. And it's taken me a long time. I've experienced burnout so heavily over the years, and I'm just like, God dang, like I need something that's gonna give me a break for this. And especially I think why we ultimately end up seeing what we end up seeing with Pearl is because there is no that time for that rest. I mean, life on a farm is it's demanding. to
Mhm.
where, you know, she's in charge of feeding all the animals. She has to take care of her father, help her mother. We see her do laundry. We see her feed the animals. We see her kind of just being general responsibility of this place. And also she's the one that goes into town, gets the medicine for her father, has all of these dreams and these desires at such a youthful age, and yet has like nowhere to do with that because this she's just kind of stuck in this cycle of things that she can't control and trying to meet and match everyone else's expectation.
And
I
when
don't-
she does do something for herself, she gets punished for it. Like, remember when she said she bought candy? Then she doesn't get dinner. If she goes to the movie, she took too long. So it's reinforcing that she can't do anything fun, and fun is bad.
I don't think she's so much cracking, like you said, Josh. I think it's that she's dropping the mask and getting over it and starting to show who she is.
That too. I mean, also that's a very very good
Yeah.
point, because you know I think that like for so long she's essentially been this individual that has constantly had to raise to everyone's expectation, and there comes a point where you just kind of have to say fuck it and live your life the way that you want to live it and do what makes you happy. We had a board involved with the nonprofit side. I was making content like hardcore. Every major release, every Marvel, every major Disney release, everything. I was like, I'm gonna, just constantly spinning out content. It was one of the busiest years we've ever done, and by the time that Christmas rolled around, I was so burnt out. The pandemic was a huge blessing to my mental health.
Me too. Like, I don't have to do anything. This is awesome. I got laid off. It was fantastic.
Kind of
Yeah.
made me a recluse. I
did.
don't like people at this point.
It did, but also the pandemic is the reason that
Mm.
abyss gazing exists. So let's not forget that either.
I mean, yeah, but I still don't have to deal with you in person.
That's fair. That's fair. I don't have to
I
deal with
mean-
you in person. I mean, I'll come to Memphis and then
Look-
go down that way.
I was gonna say, look, he moved how far away from us?
Yeah. We bring Billy on to start podcasting, and Mark's just like, "See ya, guys. I'm moving to another state."
Oh my gosh.
Halfway across the country. Yeah.
But yeah, like I got so sick and tired of like meeting like everyone's like expectations to like now I am like I open it up to like other people within victims and villains, and I'm just like I want you guys to support and go after the fields of mental health that like I just don't feel like I connect to, whether that's gaming or anime, and I want to give everything I have right here with music and film and horror and things that I'm passionate about. I want to jump in, and those are the people that I want to connect to. And it's not trying to say that I don't want to, or I don't think that other people's feelings are not important, but it's also a reason for, it's also a practice of me prioritizing my own mental health.
Yeah. And I think also, like, if you try to please everybody, you'll please no one. So if you pick your poison, you pick your thing that you like. So for me too, that's music, and vocal coaching. Like I get a lot of dopamine hits when I help people who also have ADHD or are neurodivergent in some way or have anxiety, because I know what that feels like and I want to help them. But if I try to help everybody, or if I try to have every cause, or if I try to do like I was doing in my early years, trying to be a director, actor, writer, singer, everything, like it's impossible. Like you need to focus on at least two things, narrow it down to at least two things so that you don't get burnt out. But yeah, you have to give all your attention to something. If you spread yourself too thin, it's just, that's when I end up like laying in bed watching Real Housewives and eating cake. It's happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be something you're passionate about. You can't please everybody else, because if you're not passionate about it, it's just not going to be good for anybody else, because you're not going to be happy.
The thing that really confused me for a lot of years was there's two sayings when it comes to your career, and it's like, pick your passion because then you'll never work a day in your life. And then there's don't pick your passion, because if you do, it'll become work. And so I never knew if I should really like dive in to singing and vocal coaching, because I was like, what if I end up hating it? But the absolute opposite is true. Like I think it's partially the ADHD. I have to do something I'm passionate about. It's the only thing that gives me that dopamine. So it could be different for someone who's not ADHD, but for me, I need to follow those passions or else I completely check out.
I think for me, like I don't have ADHD, or at least I've never been diagnosed with it. I might have tendencies for it anyway. I think for me, it's like I don't want to be half-hearted in the conversations or the outreach that I want to have. Like I want people to genuinely feel like they are listened to and heard and valued in conversations and the interactions that I have with them.
Yeah.
And it's part of the reason that I value platforms like Abyss Gazing and social media for as intoxicating as it is, and as much as I hate it, I think it does yield its benefits. We talked about that during X, where it's like, I met Mark, I met our last guest because of social media, and I mean, I can't say Billy I've met over social media. Mark was just like, "Yeah, this is a guy that's going to join us for this podcast," and I was like, "Okay,
For one, just one.
yeah," and he just never left. But that's
You got
also
stuck with me.
that's also how we met Harley, and it's
Instagram.
yeah. So it's one of those things that like just choose your passion, and you can have more than one, but just know your limits also.
Right. And one of the words you didn't use that I want to use is understood. I want to make sure people are understood. Like I understand where they're coming from, and it's a lot easier to connect with people more if I've got an understanding of what, versus, I understand and I have no clue.
Right.
I don't like being that person. I want to be able to say, I understand. You could vent to me. You could do whatever you need to do. I could shut up, or I could talk, or but I want to at least know what I'm talking about and not just be that person that, okay,
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, Mark. I was waiting for the asshole over there. Over there like some Ray Charles. With that Pepsi commercial.
The one of the last things that I wanted to touch on is hitting self expectations and like placing realistic expectations on yourself. When Mitzi or I think it's when Pearl and the projectionist are talking about the dance audition, and she looks at him and says, "What if I'm not perfect?" And that's the thing that is like, you are setting a standard for yourself that you will never hit. And that is incredibly hard. Understand and be a realist about the goals that you want to set, and start small. One of my favorite Bible verses is, if you're faithful with the small, then you can be faithful with the large. And I think it's the same thing is kind of applicable here, is where you set up for yourself goals that are super, small, like waking up on time, or trying to walk to the end of your block, or trying to do something healthy or eat healthy, and then progressively kind of allow those goals to get larger and more elaborate, and really kind of stretching yourself, but not going like the distance, but understanding that it's okay to leave room for failures and shortcomings, and that it's part of life.
And one of the other lines she said, the projectionist was, thank you, was, do you still think I'm pretty? It's like, and he's turned around and said, yeah, it hasn't even been 24 hours, but yeah. And that's more of a, hey, you've got to be confident in yourself and everything. You can project all you want to other people, but if you don't have the confidence in yourself, or you don't believe in yourself, it's just not going to work. You've got to be able to be in the mental head that I'm strong, I'm pretty, or whatever, and know that confidence, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It's a matter of how you feel, and that's how you project everybody else.
And once she figures that out, she may not feel like she needs fame to validate her.
Yeah.
But she doesn't have anybody in her life tell she needs us, you guys. She needs
Yeah.
us to tell her that she's pretty and that
So-
she needs to figure it out
Well-
on her own.
Well, I'll say this,
Well,
Harley, we love
apparently-
you, but but Pearl won't. I'm sorry. She's got this thing against blondes.
Damn.
And I love that callback because it actually explains why in this one, because they kicked her off the stage saying we're looking for a blonde.
Yeah, that was hard.
Yeah.
The callback.
I was
Alright.
going to say something, but forgot what it was.
Must have been
Yeah.
important.
I
So-
was
Go
just gonna say, like, I like what you said about the small goals thing, because I definitely struggle with that. And my partner and I have this little saying to kind of remind each other when we need to snap out of it. And it's from the idea that, like, those little donkeys that go up mountains and they have packs on their back. They have this huge journey to go. They need to go up this mountain, but they never look at the mountain. They always just look at their feet. They do one step at a time. So when we're really stressed, we'll be like, be a donkey. And it always just
That's
helps
awesome.
me remind myself I don't need to look at the top of the mountain. I just need to look at my steps in front of me.
Now, see,
Yeah, some-
that wouldn't work for me because me and my dumb self would be like, I'm not a jackass. It's
I would be selling Mark
The
to be
entire
a
way up the
jackass.
journey. I'm not a jackass. Yeah, that's really good that's a really good metaphor, because I mean sometimes I think we're so focused on where we're going that we miss things along the way.
Yeah.
Or we miss things that could be of severe importance to us in the long run. I know that there have been things that I've done in the last year where I'm so focused on where I'm going or where my trajectory and like the destination is that I ultimately end up missing out on a lot of those really important moments that are aligned with the journey. And that's something that, like, even in the last 2 weeks I've had to tell myself, where it's like, okay, like just breathe deep. A lot of things have gone wrong for me this month.
Oh, no.
And so, by the time that I actually reach the destination, I'm like, all right, I don't know what to expect, but I'm going to be present and I'm going to be here for 100% of everything that needs to take place. And it's going to be awesome.
Yeah,
And-
even having like a little moment. Like, we had a bunch of shows recently and they were so stressful getting them all organized together and going to the different venues and we have different drummers for each show. It was just like crazy. And then there was a moment where I just looked at my partner and I was like, we should just be excited for a second. Like, we're here, we're doing it. This is the dream. This is the goal. We're stressed, yes, but we should also have a moment to just be like, it's happening, kind of thing, even if it's brief.
Yeah, and just kind of taking yourself up with this, but I think in some ways we've developed this kind of ideology that we're not worthy of those small things, because if something is not big and if something is not grand, then surely it can't be good, and that's just simply not true. I think sometimes in the last 2 weeks, some of the best conversations or best moments that I've had in the last 2 weeks have been these really tender, intimate conversations, or things that I was expecting to go one way and ended up going this way. And it's just reveling in those tiny moments and allowing those moments to make up, because I think it's a line from Deadpool was life is essentially one big long commercial break, and you just have these little nuggets that kind of break up the shit from commercial, and it's just really reveling in those moments that life presents to you.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, I got 2 last questions for you guys, and this is there's a moment in this movie where she says that she is going to be that everyone in the world is going to know her name. From this time period, could you name any movie star?
Charlie Chaplin,
Ooh, okay, fair enough.
Buster Keaton.
Okay. 2. Let's see if you can make it to 6.
1918 specifically?
No, like the 1910s to like 1930s. We'll cast a wide net.
I think that was early Lugosi, very early Lugosi. I think.
Yeah, Bela Lugosi was 1931 was the Mummy. 1931 was
So that would be Boris Karloff.
Boris
So there's
Karloff.
4.
Judy Garland, Wizard of Oz. So I think most people like from this era like don't there's not a lot of legacy that has come out unless you're like a super deep cinephile.
I mean, well, no.
Lon
She's
Chaney.
music.
There's another one. We made it to 6.
She was a musician or a singer, French singer.
I mean, you could also say throw singers out there. It's entertainers.
I think Edith Piaf was right around the end of the 30s or mid 30s.
Yeah, I'm also trying to like remember because like a lot of the older musicians that I know like got famous in like the 40s and 50s. So like I don't know a whole lot from the 30s and
Well,
20s.
What's
there's a
Greta
scene-
Garbo. When's
Who?
Greta Garbo from? Greta Garbo.
Well, let's
Pull
find
out
out.
your phone.
with that one.
I was trying to.
But yeah,
think
there
of-
was a scene in Saving Private Ryan where they're in a town after they've taken out some Germans and it's kind of safe to relax a little bit and they're playing a record and it's Edith Piaf. So that's early 40s. And I think
To answer while he's looking that up, to answer your question was the 20s and 30s. All right, Billy, you're the only one that hasn't given us one.
I was thinking Clark Gable, but I didn't know if he said it already.
No,
In
he-
that
No.
late 30s. I mean, yeah, I was thinking Gone with the Wind. So
Oh, okay. All right. So my last question for you is it's another type of Clark and it's non-horror related, but I'm curious.
Griswold.
No. So David Cornsweet, who plays the projectionist in this, is our next Superman.
Oh,
What are you guys' thoughts on him taking up the iconic S cape
I think they should have
after watching Pearl? Let me preface that.
I think they should have gone ahead and swallowed some pride and gone and talked to Henry Cavill instead of firing him.
I cannot deny that.
I mean,
I agree
Henry
with
Cavill set the bar so high. He is Superman. Like, look at that chin.
Yeah, he took basically took the baton from Christopher Reeves.
Yeah. I mean, the projectionist is handsome,
yeah.
but he looked like little to me. But I don't know. Maybe.
He's like so they've been showing like set photos, and I love James Gunn as a director, so like I'm very curious to see what he does with the character. I really loved Guardians, Slither, like pretty much super. But yeah, David Cornsweet is like really like beefed up for this role, so I thought the same thing. I'm like, I think he's got the acting chops for it and like could do the duality really well. But
Well, they had the other Superman that was the dude that was the bass player in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And I think the problem he had as Superman was he looked too much like Christopher Reeves. So he didn't get the credit as playing it as himself.
did you say the bass player from Scott Pilgrim,
Yeah.
Michael Cera?
No.
Oh,
From his girlfriend's band.
the blonde one.
Oh, okay. The vegan powers.
The
Got it.
Vegan Powers.
Yeah,
I love that movie.
I do
I
love,
love
that movie too.
I don't know. Michael Cera as Superman could be a different turn.
I mean,
I'd be into
mean,
it.
that might work better because it's not. It doesn't feel like you're comparing him to somebody else.
Exactly. Expectations are
Yeah.
low.
Maybe he
Like
could start
wow,
as Superboy, and then come up to Superman. I don't know. Maybe work it up.
Have
Not
you
quite
seen his
Smallville.
therapy commercials?
Yes, I have.
They're amazing. Oh my gosh.
No.
I'm Michael Cera, and this is my cream.
Before we go, Harley, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you? Where can they listen to the tunes and more?
Yeah, thank you for having me. You can find me on I have a website, harley-olivia-music.com. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is at harley-olivia-music. If you like TikTok, it's at harley_olivia. And all my music's on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you stream your music these days. But yeah, come say hi. I'm active on all my socials. So yeah, say hi. I'm always there to answer any questions too.
Well, and transitioning from one active to an inactive person, Mark, where can people find you?
You can find me not posting very much on Instagram.
The running joke continues.
Yeah, it
for you.
started over. I've lost motivation again. Yeah.
Well, you've also had a rough couple of weeks, so it's understandable.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So.
Billy, where can we find you online?
You can find me at Letterbox at VABoy99.
And you guys can find me. I'm also on Letterbox. It is Captain Nostalgia. You guys can follow Abyss Gazing wherever you guys get your podcasts from. And you guys can also follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and you guys can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/victims and villains, where all of that money goes towards our mental health education efforts. We are leaving you guys once more with Harley Olivia. This is Cherries. Remember, the longer that you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back into you.